I am Rajiv Chopra back again, and this is take 3 of this short presentation and video on pinhole photography, or at least some of my experiments on pinhole photography, specifically digital pinhole photography. So here goes. Once again, I have not written a script, so I'm going to ad lib. Now, what is pinhole photography? So, before I get into that, let me tell you about why I got interested in this particular aspect of photography. Pinhole photography, commonly called uh, photography using the camera obscura, is probably the oldest form of photography in the world. And there are various theories about who invented this. Some say it was the Chinese, and some say it was somebody else. But in the essence, in pinhole photography, all that you need is a box that is sealed to the light and a tiny pinhole at one end of the box. So let's assume you have anything. Let me say that you have a matchbox or a box of a cereal box. Make sure that no light leaks in, and just make a tiny pinhole on one surface and you get an image at the other end. Of course, it's not as simple as that, because the size of the pinhole is something which you have to measure precisely. But in theory, that's all that it is. So you can convert a matchbox into a pinhole camera, you can convert the interior of your car into a pinhole camera, the cereal box, your bedroom, and there are some people who have converted an entire warehouse into a pinhole camera. In the old days, they didn't have film, so they used a room, they used a box, and once they had got the size of the pinhole done perfectly, they probably painted the other side or the side opposite the pinhole with any chemical that could record the light. So imagine a chemical like a silver nitride layer or silver nitrate layer, which you use in film, and then you would record the image and find a way to fix the image. And that's all that there is to it. So here is an illustration of what it looks like. And as you can see here, you have a box, you have a pinhole at one end, and you have the surface. So you will be viewing from here towards the tree, and what you get is an inverted image, which is a replica of the tree. Just another depiction of the same image, and this one is a little bit more technical. It's not really technical as such, but it seems technical. So you will be viewing from here. It's like when you hold up a camera. This is my old Nikon D 200. You will not view it from the object, from the lens side. You will actually be viewing the object from the viewfinder. So imagine the back of the box is your viewfinder. Of course, it's sealed, so you won't see anything. So you have to actually guess what the composition is going to be like. So this is your object, in this case the tree. The ray of light travels like this and it falls here. So as you can see, what you get is a perfectly inverted image. These rays, which go from the object into the pinhole and back onto the back surface, this is called the projection ray. The center of projection, which is the pinhole, is, well, depicted as O. The image plane is simply the back of the box where you will record the image. The viewing direction, like I said, is from here to the object. The principal distance is the distance between the back surface, the recording surface of the box, to the front of the box where you have the pinhole. And the principal point is the center of the X and Y axis. And that's all there is to it. The aperture of the pinhole is tiny, is really small. So you will have an image that is always in perfect focus. Here you have again the same image, but it's just larger, that's all. Now, I want you to look at this image. What you can see, or what you might notice, that it is not perfectly sharp. These days we are used to images that are perfectly sharp. The digital world has spoiled us. But when I was shooting with film, nothing was perfectly sharp. This is another pinhole camera. Now you have two terms, the pinhole versus the zone plate. What's the difference? The difference is in the aperture. A pinhole camera has a small aperture, f150, f200 or f100. So it is tiny. A zone plate has a larger aperture of about f40 and it has more of a glow. But because the apertures are range from f40 to f200, the image itself or the object itself is in perfect focus, yet it is not sharp. Why is that? And that's because of an optical phenomenon known as diffraction. And diffraction is a bit different from the refraction. So let's go into the next chart, which talks about refraction. Refraction happens when light or the path of the light bends when it goes from one medium to another. So assume you have a ray of light coming in from the air going into either glass or water. The light bends because the density of the two mediums are different. You will draw perpendicular, which is a 90-degree line along the surface, and the incident ray is the ray coming in from the first medium. So if the ray was coming in from here, this would be the incident ray. The angle of incidence is simply the angle between the incident ray and the normal. The normal is the 90-degree line, and the angle of refraction is the same angle between the refracted ray and the normal. That's all. So in the case of refraction, light passes from one medium like air to another like glass or water, or the opposite way. The image, however, or the phenomenon that causes the slight blurring or the glow, in the case of a zone plate, the image has a slight glow, and what you're talking about is diffraction. Now here you have an example of diffraction. Light passes along this path, it goes into this tiny little hole, and because it's a tiny hole, it kind of squeezes itself out and it spreads. And a part of the spread is what you can see here in the inner cone, and another part of the spread is what you'll see in the outer cone. These are called the Debye-Scherer cones, and because you have this light which is spreading itself after passing through this tiny hole, you have an image that is therefore not sharp. And because of the slightly larger aperture in a zone plate, this cone or this surface is a bit larger than it is in the case of a pinhole, which is why you have a slight glow. And they are unique. Each has its own, let's say, pluses and minuses. Now, why did I get interested in this particular area of photography? I did a course with the Photography Society of America several years back, and I learned about pinhole photography, and it fascinated me. So the absolute purist will use or convert a box, a room, or something into a pinhole, because that's the most difficult and that's really the pure form of pinhole photography. And thereafter, we went into the world of film. The people who shoot pinhole photography or do pinhole photography using film-based cameras will look down upon those like me who often do pinhole photography with a digital camera. But in the end, you're creating an image. Remember that the technology changes, the principles remain the same. Well, thanks for listening to me up to now, and I will now make another short video showing you hello again, and what you see, I presume, is my desktop without me, okay, without any icon. So let me show you the cameras that I have. I have two of these sorts of cameras. This is a film based pinhole camera, and this one uses 35 millimeter film. It actually has a viewfinder at the back. I'm not going to open it because there's film inside. I have another one which is a 110 mm one, which does not have a pinhole, which does not have a viewfinder at the back, and that's a bit more difficult to use because I don't know what I'm photographing. So how do you use this? You unscrew the cap. I had imported this camera and the other one from somebody in East Europe. And here you can see the pinhole. All you do is unscrew this, take it, remove it, count to one, push it back, count to one, push it back, count to one, push it back. And because we are not perfect at counting, you don't know if it's 1 second, 1.1, 0.5. So you have to do a fair amount of experimentation. And because you're constantly moving this particular cap all the time, if you try to shoot handheld, you will be in trouble because you will be moving the camera. So if you're doing film-based pinhole photography, and especially one which has a screw-on cap, ensure that you use a tripod. In general, most photographers, let's say Pinhole Resources, for instance, will recommend that you use an ISO of about 200 to ensure that you have as little noise as possible, which means that you have to use a tripod. This is my Nikon D 200, and I use this now only for digital pinhole photography. So I take off the lens and I then use either the pinhole body cap, or I use the zone plate body cap, and all I do is put it on like this, and that's it. I'm done. But what happens once I actually place this body cap on the camera body, the viewfinder stops working. So again, I have to really estimate what the hell I'm doing. This one has a focal length of 47 millimeter and an f-stop of f1.62. So that means that the image will be perfectly in focus, if not perfectly digitally sharp. And here you have the next one which I have. This is for Nikon. I don't know if they make them now for Fujifilm, but they were not in the past. And yeah, this is my zone cap, the zone plate body cap for the Nikon, and this has a 45 millimeter focal length and an f45 aperture. So therefore, it's the same process. You use the same process. What I did recently was, when I have used this camera and this particular, the zone cap as well as the zone plate, and the pinhole body caps, I took them into what we call Old Delhi, put them onto a tripod, and put the camera on a tripod and photographed. So when you're photographing something static like the image that you saw of London Bridge, then you will get something which is reasonably sharp. But if you're going to be doing street photography like I did, you will have a mixture of reasonably sharp or images coupled with the blurred. So that's something which you need to keep in mind. And this is the Camera Obscura Lens from Lensbaby, which I use with my Fujifilm X-T4. And you use the same principle. Take this off, put this guy on, and I almost dropped it. And here you have three apertures: f90, f45, and f22. So the f22 and the f45, really what you're doing is approaching a zone plate, and with the f90 you're approaching the just about reaching the border of a pinhole body cam. So it's not perfect pinhole photography. This is more zone plate photography. I took it to Connaught Place in Delhi, raised the ISO to 1600 because I didn't want to attract too many people who are gonna look at the tripod and go and make a nuisance of themselves and pester me. So now I will take you on to the next section of this video where you can see some of the images that I have shot using the body cap as well as the camera obscura. I don't have any images shot from film yet, but that will happen. I wanted to train myself with using digital pinhole photography first before I moved on to film. Now, the reason why I'm experimenting is because I've had this long thought in my brain about doing a project on Delhi using digital and film pinhole and zone plate photography, which I have for which I have a working title. I call it Delhi Through a Pinhole. I'm in two minds yet because I'm not sure if people are going to be that interested in seeing a whole bunch of images that seem, let's say, vintage or antique. But let's see. It might just happen next year. I keep my chubby fingers crossed. So I hope you enjoy the images and see you the next time around. And I hope to make a video with less of a delay.